There is nothing more unnerving and terrifying for some of us than having to do impromptu speaking, speaking off the cuff, speaking when you haven't had time to prepare. It might be that you're on an interview or panel scenario where you're being asked questions and you weren't given the questions ahead of time. It could be that you're a guest in a podcast and the host didn't give you a heads up as to what the conversation was going to be about or where the conversation was going to be led, right? Or it could just be that you are in a position where they call you on stage at the last minute or they call you in to fill in and you weren't given enough time to prepare. So, how do we move away from that frantic energy and showing up as unprepared? And how do we leverage those opportunities of impromptu speaking? I am going to give you 5 tips today that are going to help you be the best impromptu speaker that you can possibly be. So, stick around to this conversation of Sincerely Speaking. I think it's going to be a good one. You need confidence to move forward. Without confidence, you can't really achieve that dream, desire, calling, or lofty element, venture that you've had in your heart to do. Have you heard that before? That's what most experts and gurus out there sell you. Well, I have a slightly different take on it. I believe that you and I can create a feeling and a sense of confidence on demand that can propel us forward without us having to jump through all the hoops and try to figure out all the things that the gurus never really tell you how to do anyway. So if you have been struggling with this notion that you need more confidence, or if you simply have a goal, a dream, an aspiration, a movement, something that you want to start in this world, an impact that you want to have in others, and an influence that you want to use to support and help and do some good out there in the world, then I invite you to head on over to confidence.marciamaro.com, where you are going to find an amazing offer for my course, Confidence on Demand, which will give you the 3 secrets to generating that feeling and that sense of confidence when and where you need it. So again, head on over to confidence.marciamaro.com and take advantage of this opportunity to generate and create confidence when and where you need it. And in the meantime, stick around and chat with me here on Sincerely Speaking. See you soon. Okay, so why is it that impromptu speaking is such a frightening thought? It's something that throws most of us off track, and it feels like your rug is pulled right from under your feet, right? It feels unnerving, it feels anxious, it feels raw. Almost like you're naked in front of all these people. But the main reasons why we get that sense or that energy is because we don't want to look badly. We want to save face. We want to still be seen as someone who is knowledgeable, respectable, who has credibility and authority, and who has enough of an expertise in whatever it is that you're presenting to show up as that authority. So there are certain things that we can do that are going to help us show up like that, even when we are caught off guard, even when we're blindsided by a question or a topic that we weren't quite sure what to do with. And so I am going to give you these 5 tips. And again, implement them as you see fit. Take one, practice it, use it, and most importantly, make sure that the thought of having all these things in mind doesn't add to your anxiety, right? The point here is to alleviate and minimize the anxiety that you feel, not to add to it. So, the very first and most important thing is breathe. Breathe. We talk all the time about how your body influences your mind, right? We all know and understand that your mind influences your body, but the other way around works too. So look at what it is that's going on in your body and become aware of what it is that you're doing at that moment when you are caught off guard. Ask the question that you don't know the answer to, whatever the scenario might be. What is it that's happening in your body? And I always say, try to do the opposite. But the most important thing, regardless of whatever else you do, is to take a moment to breathe. Nobody's going to judge you harshly for breathing. And if you just take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, very few people are even going to notice that you're taking a pause there. And pauses actually, most of the time, help us appear more centered and appear more in control, even in situations when we don't feel like we are in control at all, right? So stop for a second, take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and then smile. Actually, while you're taking your deep breath, you should be smiling. But put that smile on your face and let your body send a signal to your brain that says that you're fine, that there's nothing here that you can't handle, that you're still in control, that you're still able to pause and refrain yourself, and that there is nothing that can shake you out of that space of calmness and centeredness, right? So that's the first thing, is breathe and smile. The second thing is repeat the question that you were just asked. And I know that that sounds really, truly very basic, mainly because it kind of is, right? But we forget, especially when it's a moment of tense emotion, of intensity, when we are in that frantic, oh my gosh, what on earth am I going to say? I have no clue what to answer. Just repeat the question, whatever the question was. And a little bit of an additional tip, an expert tip. Don't just repeat the question, but praise the question. Like, give a lot of validation and say how wonderful the question was, and praise the person asking it as well, right? So it looks a little bit like this. You're asked a question that throws you off guard. You stop, you smile, take a deep breath, and you go, this question. Oh, that is such an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked that question. Now, if you don't think that you can come up with a great answer, don't say you're glad about it. Don't lie, but do praise the person asking the question. Be like, oh, that's a great question. Or I've never been asked that question before. That is such an excellent question. I'm just so glad that you asked it, right? So think of a way to validate the person asking the question while you give yourself a little space to think about it by repeating it out loud, right? So the third thing after that is, if you're still not sure how to approach it, if you're still not sure what to say next, address the elephant in the room. So that is tip number 3, right? The first one was breathe and smile. The second one was repeat the question while also validating and reinforcing what a great question that is. And then go straight into addressing the elephant in the room. What do I mean by that? Well, the truth of the matter is that you weren't given enough time to prepare for this question. In fact, you might not have been given any time to prepare for the question. So address it directly. Say, off the top of my head, or since this is a question that I didn't have enough time to prepare for, or something along the lines of, this is a question that requires a lot more time to answer. But since we have limited time, let me just say this. Right? So address the fact that you were not given a whole lot of time, that you are not about to give a dissertation on this because it's something that you weren't fully prepared for. And just directly state the fact that if you had been given more time, the answer might shift or might be slightly different, right? So again, it might sound something like this. That is such a great one. Great question. This question, yes, I'm glad you asked it. Now, let me start by saying that if I had had a little bit more time to prepare, my answer would be more elaborate. But off the top of my head, this is what I can say about this topic. Right? And then go on to step number 4, or tip number 4, which is give yourself a roadmap. What do I mean by that? Most of the time, when we're thrown off guard, we try to sound really lofty or give a lot of information. And then what we end up doing is trying to number things, or trying to list important things, or trying to, no, 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 no. What we're going to do is give ourselves a roadmap. And that looks like a direct first answer to the question. And then if you find that you can elaborate, then you elaborate, but you give yourself a roadmap by stating clearly and directly what your answer is to the question. So let's say I'm asked, what is the most important thing when preparing for public speaking? This is a question that I ask all the time, but let's say that I'm caught off guard, right? I would say, well, what a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. If I had been given a little bit more time to prepare, I would have brought a number of steps and all that. But off the top of my head, the very first thing and the most important thing I can say is, before you prepare anything for public speaking engagement, make sure you know who you're speaking to. Make sure you know your audience, right? Now, my roadmap now is everything that I know you need to know about how to get to know your audience, how to prepare for specific audiences, how to be flexible for audiences, how to read the room with different audiences. And I can just keep elaborating and adding on to that initial answer. So I give myself a roadmap by giving a direct, specific answer to begin begin with, that is going to be what I use to elaborate from. And I hope that makes sense. So that step of giving yourself a roadmap is about being direct, saying what you know you can support. And if you can't support anything, then say, you know what, this is really a question that will require more one-on-one time later. Maybe we can talk about this at another time. Off the top of my head, if I had to give an answer, I would say this, that this is really a question that requires a lot more thought and a lot more elaboration than I can give it here. Plus, it might not help everybody. So let's just focus on talking about this later. Something along those lines, right? But give yourself a direction in which you're going to go, whether it is a direct answer that you're going to elaborate on, or stating that this is not the time and place for the answer, and that this question requires more deliberation and more thought, right? And then finally, tip number one is keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't try to sound like you know more than you know. Don't try to add more things than you're comfortable adding. Don't try to make it more complex or more elaborate or more, I don't know, insightful than it really is. Just give your answer straight to the point, keep it simple, and then go straight to the most important element that you can think of at the moment to answer that impromptu question, right? Now, if it's just that you're thrown off guard on a stage, same principles apply, right? Breathe, smile, make sure that you repeat what the topic is, or the theme of the conference, or the theme of the keynote, whatever it is that you have been given as a starting point, repeat it out loud. Address the elephant in the room. Let everybody know that you did not have enough time to prepare a more elaborate answer. Give yourself a roadmap by giving the most direct first answer that you can come up with, and then keep it simple. If you follow these 5 tips, I guarantee you're going to sound in control. You're going to appear deliberate in what you're sharing and presenting, and you are going to come out of the other side feeling like you did your absolute best and that you did not freeze or look like less than an authority in whatever field it is that you're an expert in. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please make sure you share it with someone that you know might find it useful. And until next time, this has been Marcia Amaro, and this has been Sincerely Speaking. We'll chat again soon.